In 1993, we started the Reef Relief Photo Monitoring Program. With this program, we would go out to the reef and monitor select coral formations using video and still photography. What we saw in the video transect at Sand Key Reef was pretty amazing. We actually discovered yellow band disease for the first time ever. And then we noticed white pox. We've discovered white plague type 2. There's been black band disease. There's just been a tremendous, almost epidemic proportions of coral diseases between the years of 1996 and about 1999. When you realize that corals need clean, clear, nutrient-free water in order to exist, we were faced with a dilemma with increased tourism in the Florida Keys, with increased growth developments occurring in the Florida Keys, not to mention the expansion that was taking place in South Florida. Everything that pollutes any stream or waterway in the state of Florida eventually ends up passing by the Florida Keys.
The ocean used to be the symbol and embodiment of vast elemental forces, of unconquerable nature. Incredibly, human technology and human numbers have reached a point where we are having a measurable impact on the ocean itself. And the impacts we're having on the ocean and on the rest of nature all too often come back to haunt us.
As population increases, what happens is there's a stress on the freshwater systems through use in the community, and of course there's a stress through wastewater disposal.
Joan Rose, until recently with the University of South Florida, is an expert on microbiological water quality and public health safety.
As the population has increased over the last 20 years, the way these communities have managed their wastewater is actually to use what we call on-site sewage disposal systems, commonly known as the septic tank. Generally, septic tanks are fine when you only have 1 per 11 acres. What we're seeing now is that you're seeing increases to homes of 1 per acre or even greater density, all with septic tanks. What happens is that whatever they put down their toilet ends up in the nearby waterway within 8 to 24 hours. This wastewater carries with it a number of different pathogenic microorganisms. We've been particularly interested in human viruses, these enteric viruses, because they're spread through water. The industry itself, the water utilities, the engineers, the professionals in this business know that sustainable water management is key to the future. I think one of the things that's needed is to take some of this knowledge and understanding of both the issues and some of the solutions to the community. We have to do a better job about talking about our problems and our potential solutions directly with the communities that are going to make the decision, and that includes the policymakers.
We pay a stiff price for overburdening the places we live. We pay for it in health and social issues, and we also pay for it in cold, hard cash. 20 years ago, Earl Starnes and a colleague at the University of Florida were asked by state government to study how far state services were lagging behind land development.
We looked at transportation needs, we looked at wastewater needs, and we looked at potable water needs. Those are fairly narrow limitations in terms of the study. At that time, the only identified resources through that period of nearly 20 years, through the year 2000, would have been about $18 billion. So we were probably 20 or more $billion behind when we did the study. From a sound planning standpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You have not enough resources to meet even that backlog, and yet there are future needs that have not yet been determined. I think that the governments and the state government as a leader are just as simply going to have to say, look, guys, we need to stop now and reconsider everything we're doing and make a serious effort to deal effectively with our growth problems, and in some cases limit that growth in many communities because we have exceeded by far the capacity of those communities to provide a level of human quality of life that's useful.
It is indeed all about numbers. Most importantly, numbers of people. And as with many environmental issues here, it first reached critical mass in the Florida Keys. Richard Grosso is an environmental lawyer working to connect civic planning in the Keys and other places, finally, to numbers.
The concept that we are actually running out of land to do things doesn't really register with people. But in the Keys, because the landmass is so small, it's happened already. We have run out of land. In the last 7 years, we've had unambiguous legal findings that the nearshore waters have exceeded their capacity. We've now got unambiguous findings that the upland systems have exceeded their capacity. There's no more need for new science to hide behind, and it is time for politicians to really respect the law. Nowhere in Florida is the connection between the ecosystem and the needs of people so direct. I mean, so many people who live in the Keys make their livelihood off of the ecosystem there.
In the Keys, scientists have calculated what the resources are and how many people they can support, what's called a carrying capacity study.
The scientific effort of coming up with these carrying capacity conclusions about the Keys, and then marrying that to the legal effort of limiting the rate of growth and basing your development rules, your development standards on that carrying capacity study, is something that is easily transferable to the rest of the state. Florida's growth management law can result in prohibiting development in some places. It can result in limiting how much growth can happen in certain places when there's a justification for it. And there are a lot of justifications for it, both economically and socially. And if people around the state really knew the truth that stringent growth management, strong environmental protection is actually good economics, it actually helps their own pocketbooks, is good for the economy of that local community, then you'd be seeing a lot more stringent growth management, limited moratoria, and strong ecosystem protection. People would be clamoring for it.
It all comes down to numbers. As long as there is winter, people will want to come to Florida. But Florida has a blizzard of its own, a blizzard of people. And unlike the other kind of storm, there's nothing natural or inevitable about Florida's growth problems. Florida gets its population increase in 3 ways: more births than deaths, migration from other states, and international migration. Education and responsible family planning can reduce births. Strengthening our growth management laws and committing ourselves to living within the natural limits of our aquifers can reduce the number of people moving here from other states, especially if we stop being a low-tax paradise. Florida is one of only 7 states without a state income tax. And we can reduce international migration by better enforcing our immigration laws and by returning immigration levels to traditional numbers, which were only a quarter of what they are today. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, over 70% of Florida's population growth from 2000 to 2002 was from immigrants and their children. Endless growth is a recipe for disaster, a phantom future that can and should fade away.
Okay, it's going to be part of a technological fix, but technological fixes haven't fixed a natural system anywhere.
We really have to make sure that the message goes home.
It's a stewardship thing. It's something where you should be aware of what's going on with the environment around you.